Also shows how to contact us. So another thing is during the day, if it's going to be done by 3:30, we're still going to do everything the same. We'll still come over, we'll do all that. These are only going to be for the cases when we're already gone.
Oh,
So, if it looks like it's going to, so when we get a seed on our daily schedule, we'll look and see, what time it's scheduled to start, how long it's scheduled for. If it's going to be after 3:30, then we'll, give you a heads up. Hey, this is one that you guys will be taken care of. Otherwise, you will just call us and we'll survey it like we normally do. So that won't change. We also do have an on-call tech at North for 24 hours a day. So, well, I guess overnight. But so if it's a case that you guys are doing and you lost a seed, you can start with this, start doing these steps, and then if you still are having trouble, you can call the radiology desk. They'll kind of page us, get a hold of us, and we'll just try and walk you through things over the phone, see what you've done, things we could suggest. They do want, before a seed is declared lost, we will come out and actually help survey and see what you guys have done, and then if we still can't find it, then from there we call the radiation safety officer, and then she does her mountain of paperwork for a lost seed. But like I said, chances are we never will encounter that, but it could be possible. So if a seed comes out in the OR, occasionally it does, you won't be sending it to pathology, or you won't be sending it over to be imaged unless, they have clips or something else that they need to be imaged. But the seed itself doesn't need to go to imaging. So what you'll do is just put it in like a little specimen container and then actually leave it here in the OR until everything is ready to go to pathology. So I know there was one last week that it actually got put in the envelope and then it kind of traveled all over the place before it actually ended up in pathology. But what we recommend, so even if it's one that we're going to be doing, just call us, say, hey, it came out, we'll just tell you to put it here, and then we'll pick that up when we come to do our area survey. It just kind of limits it traveling around unnecessarily. So same thing for you guys. If you guys are the ones doing it, just leave it here, set it aside. Then when you do your, after surgery survey, then that and the survey meter and everything will go to pathology. So it just kind of keeps it from traveling all over the place. One other thing I've been telling everybody is filling out the yellow sheet is going to be really important. On top of the fact that it just has to be filled out, it will help if you encounter a lost seed. You can kind of go back and say, well, I know it was here from the person signing here or whatever. It kind of just helps you limit and narrow down where it could have ended up, because otherwise you're just kind of blindly roaming the halls surveying, and it will at least give you a starting point of where you think you might be able to look. But when you're doing the actual OR survey of the room, the things that we have you do, obviously survey the bed, kind of the floor around the bed. We have you look for the linen, the trash, and then the instruments that that cart is usually sitting open. So just kind of survey that. Those are the big areas to look for. Really, what you're looking for is there is a minute chance that it could have been cut and released some of that radioactive iodine. So that's why we always have to do that survey. So most of the time the seed is already accounted for in pathology, but that is why we still have to come over and do that survey. So otherwise, we'll just go over how to use this. It'll be pretty simple. So when we bring this over, it will be turned off. So this is how you're going to receive this. It's in the off position. We'll just turn the audio on so you can kind of get a look. We're recommending you probably leave the audio on. It'll be easier to pay attention to what you're doing. But when we bring these over to imaging at the start of every day, we'll check the battery and we'll check and make sure it's working properly before we bring it over. But like I said, I've told everyone that if you have a lost seed, one of the things we'll ask is, have you checked to make sure this is working? Because if these get dropped, if this gets banged, then they don't read correctly. So that is one thing we'll ask. So I've been showing everyone how to make sure it's working. So when you first get this, you'll just turn this switch all the way over to the most sensitive setting, that 0.1. When you're looking at this, you're always going to use this middle scale here. The bottom one, where it says times 100, and it's also for this times 1,000, you're never going to have to use. It's always going to, for what you're looking for, you're not going to have to go to that high of a setting. And then this top one is just for a dose rate. So don't ignore that one and ignore that. You're just going to be focusing on that middle scale. So right now, you're just going to take whatever this scale is times this, and that's going to be what your reading is. So right now it's on 0.1. So this is actually 0.01 all the way up to 0.2. That's what this sitting is. And so then when you increase it, then it goes to 0.1 up to 2, and so on. Does that make sense? And then, so, first thing to do to make sure this is working is to check the battery. And it's this little button over here. You just hold down, and then there's this little battery test right there. As long as it's in that, see there's that kind of line and arrow pointing that way, as long as it's in there, it has enough battery to be able to operate properly. So that's the first thing to do to check to make sure it's working. The second one, all of these survey meters when they come over, they all have a little radioactive button source on them that will have a known amount of activity that you can measure. Apparently, get rid of that. So, and they will all have what it's supposed to be reading. So this one is, and they're all going to, I think they're all highlighted, so they're really easy to see. But this one, you're looking for 0.95. So to check that, like I said, on this 0.1 setting, this actually only goes up to 0.2. So you have to move it up to this one. And all you have to do is just open the little window. You just hold it right on there. So you said, like I said, this one says you're looking for 0.95. And you'll see it won't just get there and sit there. It's going to kind of bounce between 0.9 and 1. And that's fine. You just want to make sure you're in the general vicinity of that. So, you know, make sure it's not reading like 30 or 0. That way you know it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So, and then when you're doing your surveys, it's a real slow and tedious process, and you want to try and keep it as close as you can without touching whatever you're surveying, because, you know, if there was a big, you know, radioactive spill right here and you touch that, now this is radioactive and everything you survey is going to show up like it's radioactive because it's contaminated. But basically you just want it about, you know, 1 to 3 inches away from whatever you're looking, and just kind of slow and steady back and forth. And I think the training kind of has you make that Z pattern, and that just allows you to cover all the area that you're looking for. If you do check the batteries here, so say we ask you to make sure it's working, and you see that the batteries are no longer having charge, it's not a special device you have to hook up to. You just unscrew that and open it up, and it's just regular C batteries in there. So if you went to go use this and they weren't working anymore, you guys can always just throw in new batteries, and then you should be good after that. I think that's all I have. Do you have questions? That makes sense?
So where is this kept?
So right now, everything will start out the same. We'll take this to imaging when we drop off the seed, and normally now that stays over there. We go pick it up later in the day. When it's going to be your guys' responsibility, it'll just travel with the patient. So it'll come from there to here, and then it'll go from here over to pathology. So then at the end of the day, this and the seed will get locked up in pathology, and then we'll pick that all up the next morning. Any other questions?
Do you want to talk a little bit about the sentinel nodes?
Oh yes. So occasionally you will have a seed and a sentinel node injection the same day. The sentinel node injection is another radioactive injection. So occasionally it is possible you could find radioactive trash from that, even though it's not the seed. But if you find that radioactive trash and see that it is radioactive, then we have to do something with it. We can't just say, well, you know, we can't knowingly just throw radioactive trash away in the regular garbage. So we're working on where to put that, and that will be communicated when it gets decided. But if you find that, because, you know, chances are it's going to be in the big trash bag. So, you know, right now the pathology lockbox is like this big. So.
And you said you've seen that a couple times in 5 years, right?
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen often at all. I mean, you know, we don't normally have to come survey for a sentinel node injection. But like I said, if you find it, we have to address it and do something with it. So well, I shouldn't say it will happen. It could happen occasionally. So if you find it, you're just gonna have to set it aside, and then, like I said, when we find out what the final location of it will be, then we'll decide. And then what we would do is pick it up from wherever that location is, and we store it until it can be thrown away in regular trash. So just something to be aware of if they do have both those exams on the same day, is you could come across some radioactive trash that isn't associated with the seed, but you'll find it when you're doing your survey for the seed.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.